My family said I didn't deserve a seat at their dinner table. And then a man walked in and called me his wife. I wasn't glamorous. I didn't have a fancy degree. I was just a waitress, someone my family had always seen as a forgiven embarrassment. For a long time, I believed that if I stayed kind and worked hard, they would eventually see me differently. I was wrong. They called me a joke in cheap clothes, a shameless server with no self-respect. But then, a Rolls-Royce pulled up in front of the hall. He walked in, tall, calm, with eyes that searched for no one else but me. And in front of everyone, he kissed my hand and said, "Sorry I'm late, darling." The room fell silent. And that was the moment every mask in my family dropped. I almost didn't go to that family gathering. Honestly, if it hadn't been for my grandfather's heartfelt invitation, the only person in the family who still treated me like a human being, I would have gladly taken the night shift at the diner over facing those mocking eyes again. The moment I stepped into the banquet hall, I knew I didn't belong. The sharp laughter, the flowing evening gowns, crystal wine glasses lifted as if every movement demanded an audience. And then there was me, in a simple cream blouse, jeans, and old flats I had polished that morning, looking like an ink blot on a spotless canvas. No one greeted me, not a single friendly glance, just that familiar sweeping gaze, like they either didn't see me or saw something not worth looking at. I found a seat at the far end of the table, the spot furthest from the center of conversation. And then, like a long-awaited ritual, the mockery began. "Oh, look who decided to show up. Claire's here." My brother Neil's voice rang out, drenched in that brand of polite contempt he'd perfected. "Did someone forget to tell you this is a family party? Or did you think it was your lunch break at the diner?" A few polite chuckles followed. I didn't have to look up to know who joined in. Aunt Miranda, probably, with her permanently judgmental eyes. Or maybe one of those third cousins who hadn't seen me since they were losing baby teeth. I didn't respond. I just stared at the salad in front of me, the only thing in this room that felt remotely neutral. Still working at that same old place? That was my mother. Cold, sharp. Ever thought about doing something a little better? I bit my lower lip, trying to steady my voice. "I like my job," I replied softly. "Being a waitress isn't a job, it's a paid failure," she said. And I didn't know what hurt more, her words or the way she said them, like she was commenting on the weather. So calm, so casual, as if blood ties gave her the right to be cruel on a whim. Then came Neil's fiancée, glamorous, blonde, in the same designer dress I once saw her wear to the diner where I work. She'd ordered a $48 breakfast and left a $1 tip. "Do you really need to sit here?" she said sweetly, her voice like syrup that made your skin itch. I thought night shift folks didn't usually have time for family parties. I looked up, not to confront her, just to see clearly how many people were now cast in this little family drama. And then I said, quietly, firmly, without raising my voice, but cutting like a blade, "I'm here because Grandpa invited me, not to be a prop in your family performance." The table fell silent for a few seconds. Then Neil laughed, tight-lipped through his teeth. "God, you're still the mascot of this family. Funny in a tragic kind of way." My face burned. My eyes stung. But I didn't let a single tear fall. I'd endured them my whole life. I wasn't going to break again. I placed my fork and knife down, got ready to stand. And right at that moment, the sound of wheels crunching gravel echoed outside the hall. The room fell still. A Rolls-Royce pulled up to the glass doors. The door opened, and the man, the only one who had ever made me feel like I mattered, walked in. All the laughter died instantly. Even the faint clink of a spoon against a crystal glass that rang out just moments ago went silent. The entire room seemed to freeze in an instant. The glass doors opened, revealing the tall silhouette of a man in a perfectly tailored navy suit. He didn't rush. He didn't need to. His calm stride and unwavering gaze were enough to halt every conversation mid-sentence. He scanned the room, not like a man searching, but like someone who already knew exactly who he came for. And then his eyes landed on me. "Claire." His voice was deep, warm, and steady, like he was calling out the name of the only person he came here to see in this packed room full of unfamiliar faces. I stood frozen. I knew that voice. I'd heard it whisper to me on cold, rainy nights. I'd heard it say, "I'm right here," during the moments I was spiraling in fear because of my past. But I had never, ever heard it ring out in a room full of people who once made me feel I wasn't worth defending. Then he walked toward me, without hesitation, stood right in front of me, and took my hand in his. "I'm sorry I'm late, love," he said gently, kissing the back of my hand. The room exploded in silence. My mother's mouth fell open, but no words came out. Neil stared like he'd just seen an alien crash a family reunion. His blonde fiancée visibly paled, her once bold red lips fading into the color of cheap powder. "Who is that?" someone behind me whispered. I swallowed hard, not from fear, but because I knew, deep down, this moment was going to change everything. "He's my husband," I said, with no need to fake confidence. "We've been married for nearly 2 years. Somewhere, someone gasped. "What?" I held Neil's gaze, the same man who once called me the family's punchline in cheap clothes. And for the first time, I saw something in his eyes that had never been there before: confusion and the inability to hide it. "Claire," my mother finally found her voice, shaky, "you got married? Why didn't you tell the family?" I smiled, not out of spite, but like someone finally unchained. Because I knew no one here would truly celebrate it, except Grandpa. Right then, my grandfather, who had been quietly watching from the beginning, stood up. "She didn't keep it from you because it was a secret," he said, voice calm but resonant like a church bell in a stone cathedral. "She didn't tell you because she never needed your permission or your pity to be happy." Everyone turned to him, not out of respect, but shock. No one expected him to know. "You knew?" I asked softly, almost in disbelief. He nodded. "From the moment she was a little girl who wiped someone else's tears before her own. This one never needed to show off. She just needed to be loved." Ethan's hand tightened around mine, steady and warm, just like the first time we met. In an empty diner, when he was just a man suffocating under a panic attack. Today, he's a billionaire. Today, I'm his wife. But above all, I'm the one he chose. Not for my looks, not for my name, but for one simple reason. Because I saw him when the world refused to. And now, the whole room is looking at me. But no one's laughing anymore. I still remember that feeling. The feeling of being invisible. And now, every pair of eyes in that room couldn't look away from me. But I didn't feel triumphant. I wasn't happy to see the people who once mocked me now frozen in stunned silence, scrambling for answers. I just felt at peace. Ethan turned toward my entire family, the same people who once believed that only money, status, and appearance define someone's worth. "You're all wondering who I am, aren't you?" His voice was calm, every word deliberate. "I'm Ethan Hart." The room froze in an instant. I heard someone swallow hard. A few guests immediately began whispering his name to one another, as if trying to confirm they hadn't just imagined it. Hart Enterprises. A top-tier conglomerate in real estate, tech, and luxury goods. A name familiar to every Forbes list, yet a ghost to the media because Ethan always chose silence. And now, that man, the one who avoids headlines, was holding my hand. Me, a waitress with no degree, no fame, no makeup. "I'm not just Claire's husband," Ethan continued. "I'm someone she saved." Every gaze shifted toward him. 2 years ago, he said, voice growing deeper, I suffered a severe panic attack. No one knew. No one was there. I sat in a rundown diner just before midnight, unable to breathe, unable to speak. He paused, locking eyes with me. Then Claire walked in. She didn't know who I was. She didn't care what I wore, what car I drove, or how many millions I owned. She just asked, "Are you okay?" I gave his hand a gentle squeeze. For a moment, we were both back in that rainy night, sitting across from each other, breathing through the storm, one breath at a time. She sat with me for 22 minutes. She didn't talk much. She didn't pry. She just showed up in a way that was quiet but so powerful I had never experienced anything like it before. I saw my mother press her hand against her chest, like her heart had skipped a beat. Neil tried to keep a stoic face, but his fingers tapped rapidly on the chair arm, a clear sign of panic. She didn't know I left her a $500 tip, Ethan continued, and she never contacted me again. I was the one who returned to that diner, again and again, just to see the woman who made me want to live. The room fell into a heavy silence, not because they were shocked, but because they were all being forced to confront a truth they had never considered, that Claire, the one they looked down on, had been the light during the darkest night of a man the world admired. So, yes, Ethan said, turning back to the banquet table. She's my wife, my savior, the kindest person I have ever known. I heard a wine glass fall to the floor with a clink. Maybe it was Aunt Miranda. She was wiping her face with a tissue, though I couldn't tell if it was wine or tears. And whether she's a waitress, a doctor, or just a girl no one remembers at a forgettable party, Ethan concluded, she would still be my choice, every day, for the rest of my life. I couldn't hold it in anymore. Tears spilled down my face, not from pain, but because, for the first time in my life, I felt seen, not through a title, a family name, or a social status, but just as me. My mother opened her mouth to say something, but I had already turned away. I didn't need an apology right now. What I needed was time. And I needed to hold on to this feeling, this rare, precious feeling of being loved without conditions, of being respected without having to prove I was worthy. I don't remember how I left the party. All I recall is Ethan holding my hand tightly, guiding me through the banquet hall I had spent my whole life avoiding. No one stopped me. No one called my name. There was no more laughter, no more whispers behind my back. We walked out through the large glass doors, leaving behind a family frozen in silence, surrounded by the shattered pieces of their own pride. As the doors shut behind us, I heard the click of the hinge, final, definitive, like the period at the end of a sentence that didn't need to be emphasized. Ethan opened the car door and helped me into the waiting Rolls-Royce, its engine humming softly like a steady breath. He didn't say anything, just placed his hand gently on my thigh, firm, warm, steady, as if to remind me I wasn't alone in my trembling. I looked out the window. The city moved on, untouched, unaware. But me, for the first time in years, I felt light. Not because someone had rescued me, but because I had finally stopped bowing my head. "You okay?" Ethan asked as we turned down a quiet street. I nodded. "I just didn't expect you to come. I thought I'd have to face it alone again. Like always." He smiled, tilting his head slightly. "I told you, didn't I? Once you stop running, I'll always walk beside you." I squeezed his hand, not tightly, just enough for him to know I was grateful. When we got home, I didn't turn the lights on right away. I sank into the familiar sofa, slipped off my shoes, leaned my head back, and breathed. Really breathed. Deeply. For the first time in years. My phone started vibrating. 6 missed calls, 14 messages, all familiar numbers. Mom, Neil, even Neil's fiancé, the one who once tipped me a single dollar. I didn't read them. I didn't have to. I already knew what they wanted. For me to calm down, to talk it through, or, worst of all, to apologize without even knowing what they'd done wrong. I placed the phone face down on the table. Right then, the doorbell rang. It was a courier with a hand-addressed envelope, blue ink, in handwriting I recognized immediately. Grandpa. I opened the letter, just a few shaky lines, but words so raw they caught in my throat. "Claire, I don't have the strength to shout anymore. But if I did, I would have stood up and slapped each and every one of them. Not because you need someone to fight for you, but because they need to relearn what it means to be human. I'm proud of you. Not because of who your husband is, but because you've become a woman who knows who she is and isn't afraid of being seen. If you're free, meet me at the old cafe next week. No need to dress up. Just come as you." I read it over and over again. And each time, my heart softened a little more, Not because he defended me, but because he always saw me, even when the whole world looked away. I placed the letter on my chest and closed my eyes. Ethan didn't ask a thing. He just sat down beside me, wrapped an arm around my shoulder. I think I'm ready to see him, I said. And I went to the little cafe with the old wooden tables, checkered tablecloths, and chipped ceramic mugs. He was in his usual corner, Kane resting by his side, his eyes lighting up the moment I walked in. "My girls come home?" He grinned, arms wide. I hugged him, longer than necessary, but it still wasn't long enough. We talked for over an hour, about my journey, about Ethan, about that stormy night years ago. And then he looked at me, his tone suddenly serious. "Claire, your mother wants to see you." I gripped my coffee mug and fell silent. Ethan, sitting beside me, gently squeezed my hand beneath the table. Not pushing, not pulling, just quietly reminding me, whether I choose to forgive or not, that choice belongs to me. I didn't respond to Grandpa that same day. I needed time, not to decide whether I wanted to see my mother, but to ask myself one question. Was I ready to face the eyes that once made me feel like a failure? 3 days later, a message came from my mother. No small talk, no fake tenderness. "I saw Ethan's interview. I saw the way he talked about you. I saw you, confident, kind, and I realized I should have been the first to see that." I read that message over and over, nearly a dozen times. There was no "I'm sorry," no begging, but there was something I had never received from her before: acknowledgement. I called her, not to forgive, but to open a small door. Not for her to walk back into the past, but to finally see the person I had become. "Somewhere simple," I said. "No events, no dresses, just you and me." We met at the Riverside Park, the same one I used to walk through alone years ago when no one called my name except the wind. She stood there, clutching her handbag like a shield. Her heels sunk slightly into the grass, making her look off balance. But her eyes, those eyes, were different. No longer scrutinizing, just unsure. "You came," she said softly. I sat on the stone bench. She sat too, keeping a distance, as if afraid her presence might push me away. We sat there, with only the wind and the scent of grass between us. "You've changed," she said quietly, "but you're still you." I looked at her, not angry, not cold, just a calm that had taken me years to reclaim. "I'm not asking for an apology," I said slowly. "But if you truly want to rebuild something, I need a beginning, not an excuse." She lowered her head. For the first time, I saw her shoulders truly tremble, not as a performance, not as defense, but real. "I was wrong," she said. "I didn't know how to love a child who wasn't like me. I thought if you didn't fit the mold, you would fail. But in the end, I was the one who made you fall the hardest." I gently clenched my hands in my lap. That sentence, one I had once dreamed of hearing and later believed I'd never need, left me frozen. Not crying, just still. "I'm not asking for immediate forgiveness," she continued. "But if you'll allow me, I want to try again. One step at a time." I didn't answer right away. I watched the river flow in the distance, then turned back to her. "I'm willing to begin again, but not in my old role. I won't pretend to be obedient. I won't give up my work just to be called a good daughter. If you want your daughter back, then it has to be this version of me, the one you never truly saw all those years." She nodded, slowly, but clearly. We sat there for a few more minutes, saying nothing, letting the silence soften everything too big to name. Before leaving, she asked, "Are you happy?" I smiled gently. Happiness isn't always peaceful, but I get to be myself now. And for me, that's enough. That night, I told Ethan everything. He didn't say much, just poured us tea like he always did, and gave me space to breathe through what had just unfolded. A few days later, I went back to the old diner. back behind the counter, apron on, smiling at customers just like before. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. At the door, a man stood still. Neil. A bouquet in his hands. No ring, no mask. I just wanted to say I was wrong. I looked at him, then nodded. Thank you. We didn't hug, but we began again, from the very place everyone thought I'd never rise from. If you've stayed with me until the very end of this story, thank you, truly. Not because this story is more special than the ones you've heard before, but because you chose to witness something that many people prefer to ignore. That true validation doesn't come from applause. It comes from a knowing glance, a steady hand that holds yours when the rest of the world turns away. Claire didn't become somebody just to be loved. She simply chose to be herself, even if it meant walking away from an entire family. And it's because she stopped trying to be accepted that she finally became seen and loved in the most genuine way. If you've ever been dismissed, labeled as different, a disgrace to the family, or never measuring up, please remember this. You don't have to change who you are just to be acceptable in someone else's eyes. Because sometimes the only person you need to make proud is yourself. And if someone only starts respecting you after realizing you're important to a wealthy person, that respect was never truly for you, but for the status they think comes with you. Don't let that be the yardstick you use to measure your worth. In the end, if your journey is as rough and uncertain as Claire's, if you're walking alone through doubt and pain, then let me say just one thing to you. You deserve to be loved, to be seen, to be chosen. No makeup needed, no titles required. Just you, authentic, strong, and honest with your own heart. This is where the story ends. If it touched you in any way, I'd be so grateful for a comment, a like, a share, or a subscribe. Your support means everything, and it gives us the strength to keep telling stories like this one. Thank you for listening. Take care, and see you in the next video.